what I judged my success by week to week was not based on how many families I helped, but it was based on, okay, did I run my 30 appointments? Did I run 30 solid appointments? If I did, and I had a good attitude the whole time, I did everything I possibly could have to set myself up to win. And sometimes it's not going to go your way, you know? Like I played a lot of sports growing up, Jamie. Like sometimes you can watch all the film, do all the practice, be the better team, and sometimes you lose. Like, and it's just going to happen. And I always looked at that like, okay, to review back, what did I do wrong this week? What could I have done better this week? And I didn't care about losing. I just wanted to win. I just wanted to figure out, I lost that week. What can I do better to adjust for the next week, right?
I'm like, what's the dream of? What's the hope in? What's the doubt for? Live to no end. This is living. The life I've been given is a gift. If I'm a living, I'm a live with the death. So what's the dream of? What's the hope in? What's the doubt for? And live to no end. This is living. The life I've been given is a gift. If I'm a living, I'm a live with the death. Yeah.
All right, welcome everybody to the Living Hope Agency Call. Excited to have our special guest, Mr. Zac Twardowski here. Tonight, we're really digging into something that the company as a whole is really focusing on this year. And you guys are going to start seeing these meetings pop up all across the country. And it's something called the Road to Hall of Fame. You guys are going to start seeing Road to Hall of Fame and Road to Integrity meetings popping up all over the country. And I couldn't think of a better person to help us kick this off, especially for a group of agents that are, all over the country, not really centrally located. I couldn't think of a better person to kick this off than Zac Twardowski. Not only has he personally hit Hall of Fame twice, so that's over 400 families helped. And I believe he was even higher than 400 families his 2 years as a Hall of Fame producer. He's also become what's called a Hall of Fame agency manager, which means that they helped a lot of families in a year. And we can kind of talk a little bit about that. But the one thing I really love about Zac not only is, his fact that he's kind of led from the front, but he also, I believe, has helped the most people hit Hall of Fame in 2021, which is a really, really cool accomplishment. Their team does have average most families helped per agent across the whole company. So I couldn't think of anybody better to learn from. Zac, did you make it on, man?
Dude, I'm here, and thank you for the kind intro, Jamie. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. I'm always excited to do calls with you. There's a lot of people that I love to learn from, but I remember we did this call last year, and there are people on our team, one in particular, Mike Curry, who he hit Hall of Fame last year. And I remember he specifically said that the call that you did with us last year, as well as a couple other trainers, were pivotal in helping him change his in-home, helping him change some of the word tracks on the phone that helped him go out there and hit Hall of Fame. So thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, dude, no problem at all. And I think, I think hopefully what everyone can get out of today, Jamie, is realizing sometimes we overcomplicate a lot of this. And that's probably what Mike got to, is like, oh, I thought this was more than it really was, and just simplifying it and giving a clear path. So I'm fired up, and you just did our manager call last week. I got a ton of great feedback. So, you all on this call could not be in any better hands. And I'm just appreciative that you asked me to get on.
Sure, man. So just real quick, 30 seconds background. When did you find out about Family First Life? How long have you been here, and kind of what's happened for you?
Yeah, so I found out about Family First Life. So my wife and I moved to South Carolina when I was 22. We both were going to go to medical school. We both deferred our enrollment for 2 years. She took a teaching job down there, kind of like Peace Corps type teaching job. They didn't pay her much, and they were just trying to fill up schools where they couldn't get teachers at. And we were talking about the other day. She's like, "Why did you move with me?" I'm like, "I don't know. We've been dating for like 8 months." And I was like, "No, I'm going to go with you." And I think whatever you believe, stuff just happens for the right reason at the right time, And then I found Family First Life down there after I'd accepted a medical sales position, which was a bit more in my comfort zone, just because I grew up with, doctors all in my family. I didn't ever start that job. I started doing this beginning of 2018, and then spent 3 full years in the field, 18, 19, and 20. And then, was able to, do a deal with Integrity July of last year. So it's been quite the ride, and just grateful to even have found the industry and be a part of it. And I don't know, just grateful for a lot of the mentors I've had that have helped me get to the place we're at right now, Jamie. So.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's just been an incredible journey for so many of us, and just to see how much, your life has changed. It's something that, I know myself and so many others, kind of aspire to achieve. And I mean, Hall of Fame it's a building block, because this is a business. And I think that's really clear here. We've talked about in the past how, anybody can do this, but really, like, this is a business. Like, this takes work. It takes investment of your time. It takes investment of your capital. It takes, learning how to get better and constant, never ending feedback every single day. And I know obviously it wasn't just a straight up line for you. If you look at your growth, you had some struggles in the beginning, and, I'm sure that if somebody would have told you, what Hall of Fame was and that you were going to achieve it, not once, but twice, you probably would have looked at them like they were crazy. So for you, kind of, when was that,
and I hit it the third year too. So, I mean, the first year I barely squeaked by it, so barely count it. Right now, it would have been like the very last person to hit it in 2019 or 2018. And that, dude, I had no belief going into that year that I could hit it, but I think, I think most people on this call probably went to conference. I know we were talking, we had a lot of people there, right?
Yeah, we had about 110 people there.
So I remember grabbing Mark Mead for a couple minutes at the first conference I went to, and I was doing maybe 15 to 20 families helped a month. For the first couple months I was there, so January, February that year. And I talked to him. I had a pretty honest, blunt conversation with him where I was like, I'm doing the same things you say you're doing. I'm doing 20 appointments a week. I'm just not seeing the same result as you are. And he pretty bluntly at that point told me that he had, to summarize a longer conversation where he laughed at me a lot. If you all have heard Mark train, you understand that he laughs and everything. And he did that right like this close to my face, but it was all out of love, right? But he basically told me he was much better at selling than I was because he'd been doing it for so much longer than I had. He's like, I've been doing insurance since you were in middle school, bro. So I don't know why you expect to be the same place that I'm at right now when you've only been doing this for 2 months. And you have two choices. You can wait as long as it's taken me to get good at this, to run the same activity I run, or you're going to have to work a lot harder than me to have even close to the same result. And so we broke that down, and we broke down based on how many families I helped, per how many appointments I set. And he was like, dude, if you set 30 appointments, you're going to help maybe 8 to 10 families a week. Right. And I was like, yeah, that's about right. And he's like, okay, well, then that means you can never miss 30 appointments a week. And really, you should be closer to 32 to 35 a week to guarantee that you're going to hit Hall of Fame. And you're behind the 8 ball because the first 2 months here, January and February, you're only at like 25 families helped total. So you're going to have to actually probably do 35 appointments a week for the rest of the year and not miss it at all to hit the goal you want to hit. And then seeing that play out the rest of that year, Jamie, is what gave me, like you said, anyone can do it. And I believe that to some degree, right? Like, I don't think it takes any natural skills or talents or anything like that. But I don't know that everyone has like the grit to get through some of the hard times that you have to go through. I think anyone could do it, but I think some people choose not to because there's an easier way out, right? But seeing how that played out that year, it did two things. It gave me the understanding that it didn't take any skill, because I was good on the phone. I would set 30, I'd sit with 25, and then somehow I'd close like a third of them, It was like I'd close like 8 families out of 25, and that was terrible, right? But it gave me the understanding that doing that, I was able to take care of my family really well and help a lot of families. And that became just the roadmap for us, was 30 appointments or die a week, and that's all we preach to new agents is what is the silver bullet? How do you be successful in this business? And it's just, can you get the 30 appointments a week or not? And if you can, I'm not saying everyone's going to be successful, but I've not seen many people fail doing that. And if you're running 10 to 15, flip a coin whether or not you'll make it in this industry, I think, and I think that's the realization I came to at that point. And people that are very good at sales, sure, you might make it if you're doing 15 appointments a week, but I was never talented enough to pull it off doing that. So that became what we built our business around too, is I wanted agents who were not lifelong salespeople to do well, right? Jamie, like when I was building, that was my biggest fear. I'm like, how do I do something and how do we build something where I think that it doesn't require any skill to do it? And we had to make the activity so much outweigh the skill set it took to where it didn't even matter at that point. And then you get better along the way, right? So that's when it clicked for me, dude.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. So you've only been in this industry just a couple of years, correct?
Yeah, so I've been here 4 years and some change now. It was 4 years in January.
And how many agents on your team cumulatively, we'll just say total over your career, have hit Hall of Fame?
I know we had 17 last year. So we probably had, I would say maybe 25 or so that have hit it over the career.
Okay. That's incredible. So obviously, you've gone about, coaching a lot of people how to get there. And obviously, the Hall of Fame, I mean, it's an accolade, but more than anything, it Mike Curry said this to me. He said, I think the Hall of Fame, more than anything, it's not really a skill goal or really a skill accolade. It's more of a consistency award. It's like you were consistent in purchasing leads every single dial day. You were consistent in booking, 15 to 18 appointments every single dial day. You were consistent in sitting with at least, X amount of families per week. And I think that's so true. And you guys, you have just this mentality in your group of like doing uncommon things. I mean, you guys were setting appointments on Thanksgiving Day for a couple of hours and saying, hey, we're just going to see who will do it, just to get people out of their comfort zone. So, I mean, just, speak to everybody about, what that kind of did for your team, just whether it was, Thanksgiving appointments or just in general, teaching people to get up and start dialing at 7:30, buy leads every single dial day, doing uncommon things that are maybe uncomfortable for them, whether they hit Hall of Fame or they don't hit Hall of Fame, just putting their activity at Hall of Fame, numbers, what did that do for your team? And, what could it do for, a new person who's maybe trying to set their sights, not sure if they could even do this?
Yeah. So Jamie, one thing I knew about myself, like, I think it's good to know your strengths and weaknesses, right? And one thing I knew about myself pretty early when I started building a business was and I've worked on it a lot, like with people like yourself, Grady, Trey, Stephen Yee, and I met the other day. Like I've worked on speaking a lot because it's not something I'm naturally good at. And like some people have it. Some people have the, the charisma and the speaking skills and they can articulate things a certain way. Like we did a call with Sean Ruggiero today and I'm like, dude, that dude he's just got it. Like he's probably worked on it, but he's freaking got it. Like he's just so good. And I had to really learn that. But while I was learning how to be better at articulating things, I knew that if I wasn't the best at convincing people to go do something, if I was out there leading every single week by example, consistently every single week and doing things that I didn't necessarily have to do, so I would always run on Sundays. And part of it was because it freed up time during the week for me to go and work on building my business and work with agents and my staff and other things. But also I was like, if I'm doing that and people know, maybe I don't have to be doing that. Our team's doing, for helping 500-600 families a month. And I'm writing, I'm helping 700 families a month and all that sort of stuff's going on, a year. And I'm still out there on Sundays working. People know I didn't have to do it. So people were more willing to fall in line and kind of follow the example. And our goal when we were doing this was to help people get out of a bad financial spot, right? Like Jamie, if it would have only been about money on the building an agency side, I don't think I would have ever built an agency. I was plenty comfortable with just selling, but it became more about like, how can we teach people how to really have success in this industry and show people the right way to do it and show people, what I consider to be a relatively, fail-proof way of doing it, right? And it's by doing a lot of things you don't have to do and standing out from the competition. So we looked at it like this, like on dial days, Easton and I would get there at 7, we'd have our coffee or whatever, we'd get all of our leads organized and we would start dialing at the latest by 7:30 every single dial day. And I looked at it like, all right, I bet 99.9% of other insurance agents or salespeople will not start out on the phone until 9 o'clock. If I have an extra hour and a half on them every Monday and Thursday for the whole year, 3 hours a week for the whole year, that's a lot of compounding interest is going to be in my favor, right? And I'm going to get so far out ahead of people by doing that they're not going to be able to catch me, even if they are way better than me, right? And that's just the way we looked at it. And I wasn't necessarily competing against anyone else, but I was competing against everyone else at the same time. Does that make sense, Jamie? And a good example of the consistency thing is, in 2019 I was never the number one submit writer or issued writer for the week in the Southeast hierarchy, which I was a part of, right? Or which I'm a part of. But I was always like, third or fourth or 10th or somewhere in there, right? And I always had my 30 appointments. But by the end of the year, I finished number one in that group. And it wasn't because I was better than anyone, but it's because I just did the same thing every single week. And there's a lot of power and consistency, like you said. And it does a couple things, like 30 appointments a week, I knew would, get me 50 families helped a month, no matter what. I just knew how the numbers were going to work out if I did it every single week. And it did a couple of things for me. And it gave me I knew exactly how much extra I would have left over to be able to build my business with. I knew if I needed to add another business expense, I could easily go, I'm going to add 2 more appointments a week. And I knew exactly what that would yield me. And my numbers were so locked in because it was so consistent that it was very easy for me to go, I need to add another staff. Okay, I'm going to run 3 extra appointments a week. I know exactly what that's going to get me, right? And then it also, when you're independent like that, I had such a locked in schedule that it didn't allow me to ride the financial or emotional roller coaster, because all of my what I judged my success by week to week was not based on how many families I helped, but it was based on, okay, did I run my 30 appointments? Did I run 30 solid appointments? If I did, and I had a good attitude the whole time, I did everything I possibly could have to set myself up to win. And sometimes it's not going to go your way, you know? Like I played a lot of sports growing up, Jamie. Like sometimes you can watch all the film, do all the practice, be the better team, and sometimes you lose. Like, and it's just going to happen. And I always looked at that like, okay, to review back, what did I do wrong this week? What could I have done better this week? And I didn't care about losing. I just wanted to win. I just wanted to figure out, I lost that week. What can I do better to adjust for the next week, right? And I was talking with Paul McLean this weekend about something, and he was like, "Did you ever used to review everything?" I'm like, "Dude, whenever I used to do travel trips, on the way to the travel trip, I used to write out my appointments, Jamie. Like on the plane, I'd write out my appointments exactly how I wanted them to go, and then on the way back from the travel trip, I'd go review every single appointment I had and take notes on it and see where I messed up. And then if I didn't know what I did wrong, whenever I landed, I would call someone that could walk me through what I did wrong." So I treated it just like watching game film and just always trying to do little tweaks, little things. I tried this thing here, it didn't work. What can I adjust now to get better and be more efficient in my appointments? So I know I threw up for a second there, but
Hey,
does
that's
that answer
good,
your
man.
question at all?
No, that's good. There's a couple things I kind of took away from that. So, you treat it like a business owner pretty early on in regards to, you started to figure out what your numbers and your ratios were. And you also figured out how to not ride the emotional roller coaster of sales through consistency. I think that's it's so huge. I mean, you have a huge week and you're on top of the world, and you have a bad week, and you have what Andrew calls the doom loop, and you talk yourself out of working, and you get into this analysis paralysis. But it's the person who is just incredibly consistent, who understands that regardless, the only thing that matters is the activity. So, you guys are just a great team when it comes to, glorifying not the results, but glorifying the activity. I think that's huge, and it's super inspiring. So, kind of moving on so we can give them some practical things. We don't need to necessarily go through your whole, phone script or your whole in-home, but I know that last year when we did this, there was some things that were really pivotal for a lot of the team when they heard just some of the principles behind, why you set the table and the way that you set the table. And it sounds just from like what you were saying, you're a student of the game. And I think that everybody here, you have to be a student of the game. You have to constantly figure out how we can get better, how we can learn, how we can grow. So, what would your advice be for somebody to, obviously we'll put phone, dialing the phone in the appointments. We're just going to assume that they're willing, they have the grit to get their 30 appointments. Now, someone who sits with 30 appointments, how can they get better every single week? And, what would your advice be for them to take it from, I'm closing, 5 out of 20 to I'm closing, 10 out of 20, or I'm closing, 10 out of 30 to, 15 or 20 out of 30?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I remember early on, Jamie, I had a conversation with John Wetmore, and I was telling him about another in-home I had. And he's like, "Dude, we've been through this one like 3 or 4 times." He's like, "Let me ask you something. Do you pay attention at all when you're in the house?" And that's why I liked him, dude. He's just so blunt with me on everything. And I was like, "What do you mean?" "I think I pay attention." He was like, "Do you read anything? Like, do you pay attention to body language, or like how when you say something, it comes across a certain way and they react poorly to it? Like, are you watching any of that? Are you so just caught up in what you're about to say next that you pay no attention, and you're not really, like, you're hearing what they're saying, but you're not listening to the customer?" And I was like, "No, I'm definitely not doing that." And then we hung up, and I was thinking about it. I was like, "No, I definitely am doing that." Like, I'm just thinking so much about like, what am I going to say next, that I'm not actually listening to the customer. And I'm talking 60% of the time, they're barely talking at all, right? So I wanted to preface going into some in-home stuff with, there's a couple of things I think that are really important. When you're in the home, you have to slow down and really listen and let the customer sell you on what they need, is like the most important thing you could do. And if you feel like I did when I was newer, I felt like I was talking and explaining 60 to 70% of the time in the appointment. And then when I got a lot better and started helping most of the people I met with, if I was sitting down with Jamie, I would let Jamie and his wife talk 60 or 70% of the time. I would ask a few good questions, and then I would listen to them and let them sell me on why they need insurance, right? So as far as setting the table, Jamie, but that's like my whole approach to in-home is let me let Jamie and his wife explain to me why they need insurance, not me explain to them why I think they need it. Because especially if you're younger, right? Like, especially as a 22, 23, 24-year-old kid, I'm like, dude, they don't give a, what I think about their financial situation, right? And I think it applies to everyone, but especially if you're younger. Like, I wanted to really get them, pull out of them and let them explain to me why they needed it, right? But
I
I
mean,
think you
you're
have to do it
basically
with,
you're asking really good questions, and then
yeah,
you're basically restating back to them what they just said, and then kind of doing like a simple trial close. So like if what I'm hearing is
exactly.
correct is if XYZ happens, Susan, you're going to be out of the street, got to go move in with mom. So obviously this solution would do XYZ. You guys see why that would be valuable, right? Yes.
Exactly.
It's just a
And I
lot of.
think, Jamie, asking the right questions too, right? So like, for example, I think of a wrong question would be like, hey, Jamie, why did you fill this out? Whether it's an internet lead or a mortgage lead or whatever it is, right? That's a bad question if you ask me. Whereas like what I think a good question would be, hey, Jamie, let's say it's internet lead. Hey, Jamie, I assume you filled this out because you want to make sure when you die, very important, like when you die, that you're not leaving a burden on someone. Is that correct? Yep. Okay. Who would that person be that you don't want to leave a burden on? My daughter. Got it. So your daughter would be the beneficiary for this policy. Is that right? Yep. And then I can spend time digging it. So like to dig into that, I'd be, okay, Jamie, so you live in Oregon. Where does your daughter live? Arizona. Got it. Is she married? She have kids? No, she's not married. 2 kids. What does she do for work? Oh, she's a teacher. Okay, great. So Jamie, are you wanting to make sure when you die that your burial is paid for, that any debt that you have is taken care of, or you just want to leave her a legacy? I want to, whatever. I want to make sure my burial is paid for and I have a little debt I want to take care of. Got it. What would that look like for her having 2 kids, being a single mom and a teacher, trying to pay for this without you having anything in place for her? Let him tell me what it looks like. Let me listen to him for 5 minutes. Tell me what it would look like. Got it. So Jamie, just to recap, we need to make sure we put something in place that would at least cover a funeral today, pay for a little bit of the debt that you have, to make sure your daughter doesn't have to come up with all this in order to pay for your funeral, because you don't want to leave that lasting, image of you being a burden on her when you pass away. Does that sound about right? Like that's what I'm doing in the first 10 minutes of the appointment to set the table. Because then when I go, all right, Jamie, so just so you know, my job is really simple. Now I'm problem solving, right? My job is really simple. I work with a bunch of different carriers. I'm going to ask you a couple questions about your finances, health, etc. It takes about 7 minutes for me to run through this sheet with you. Based on the way you answer these questions, I'm going to be able to figure out what the best situation for you would be so that we can get that coverage in place for your daughter so you don't have to leave that burden on her. Does that sound good to you? Like I sell it up front before I even go into anything. And then all I'm doing from the rest of the appointment is just solving the problem he told me he had.
It's like a lot of people, they get really caught up in, let me figure out what's the specific product solution that I need to figure out, where it's really, let me pitch them the concept of life insurance and how this will help their family. And you see why that will be valuable, right? Correct. Okay. And you see how having something like this could solve your problem, right? Yes. And then it's like, now that I've got you bought into the idea of the solution, hey, now let's figure out what you can qualify for that can actually, solve that. So I think that's big.
And I let them talk for a little bit. So I let them go. So what would it look like for her? Like, do you want to put her in that situation? And so like I asked some closed-ended questions up front to get down a specific path, and then I open it up to him. So, and then let him tell me about what the situation looks like. And if you do it the right way, most people will open up to you and be like, yeah, like my mom left me in this situation. I don't want to be there. I've seen so many people go through financial devastation or whatever it is. I love my daughter and don't want to put her in that spot. And they'll give you everything you need to when you get to the end of the appointment. If Jamie then goes, hey, I really want to think about it. I go, Jamie, you told me your daughter would be financially devastated by this if you didn't put this in place. So why don't we go ahead and do this and start with this lowest option here? So at least the burial is covered. You may have a little debt, but at least your burial is going to be covered. We get that in place. And then if you want to call me in a month, 6 months, or a year, we can always go back and get you more coverage, but we can't go back and not put anything in place. You die and leave her with this mess. So go ahead and grab me your bank account and your routing or bank account, and your driver's license, and we'll get this application done.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you close. It's not, hey, let's see if you get approved. Don't do that. That's going to cancel. I close based on, Jamie, you told me your daughter is SOL without this, man. And I can't, as a man, and you're another man, I can't let you do that to your family. So let's go ahead and put something in place today.
Yeah, it's like there's Matt Smith talks about, there's the logical side and then there's the emotional side. And some people, they're sold 100% on logic, but when logic doesn't work, you have to bring emotion into it. And some people are 100% emotion too. So
I think you have to have both, right? I think if you do a good job, it makes sense to them. And then it also is like, yeah, I'm trying to picture what that looks like without it. And I don't want to do that to my family,
Mm-hmm.
And you're pushing from a place. This is the other thing that it does. If you set it up the right way, is now I'm pushing for a place of advocating for Jamie's beneficiary. I'm not going, why don't we see if you get approved so I can get a commission? I'm going, hey man, your daughter really needs this. Let's go ahead and put this in place for her. And just so you know, my job's just getting started. I'm going to make sure, when you do pass away, that I'm there to put my foot down the insurance company's throat and get her paid as fast as I possibly can. So just so you know, after this, you're stuck with me. You can't get rid of me, and I'm your guy forever, and you can't do anything about it. And they'll usually laugh, or sometimes they'll go, okay, good. So
And I'm sure that some of these things you're saying, I mean, they're very direct. And I mean, it's
yeah.
just, it's psychology behind what we do is so direct. And I mean, I'm sure that was uncomfortable for you at first. I mean, what would you say to somebody who struggles with being direct?
I think, dude, I struggle with it in the beginning too. And if you're struggling with being direct, I think it's because you're doing it from a place of I'm trying to make a sale and I don't want to offend anyone, right? If you can change your mindset to go, I'm really trying to serve these clients and these families. And man, look how bad of a situation this guy's daughter is going to be in if I don't get some insurance put in place, then I feel comfortable pushing, right? And then on the other side of the coin, Jamie, I would set enough appointments to where if I met with Bob and he has $10 million of insurance already in place, and his daughter has a trust fund and they don't really need it, and he was kind of looking at it, I'm not going to put, I'm like, okay, like, do you want some insurance or no? Like, you just want to buy some insurance and it's a win-win-win. Like, I get paid, your daughter will get paid. I mean, it's not a win for you because you're going to pass away, but you at least mean your daughter are going to get paid. Like, I just, whatever, dude. But
Yeah.
if it's like someone who really needs it, then I'll push and spend a lot of time. But if it's not, then I'm cool with getting out of there because I have enough appointments booked.
And that's it right there. You just said it. It's more comfortable to be direct when you have a bunch of appointments. It's easy to beat around the bush and try to be their friend when you only have 3 appointments set for the day, when you only have 6 appointments set for the week. But when you have 8 appointments today, 9 appointments today, I have absolutely no problem being direct. It's like, yeah, of course we're going to sit there and we're going to fight for the objections and we're going to try to set the table the best that we can. But at a certain point, if you know that you're, on the losing side of this thing, I'm not going to spend an hour and a half going back and forth with this person. It's time to go to the next. But there are some clients where you just, you see that there's a need there. And just, if you didn't fight for them and push them over the mark, and I'm sure you've had so many clients in your career, thank you, for fighting for them and helping get them over the mark. So like, I guess just like, where do you develop that? Because I think that we all talk about how, if I set the table strong enough, you're not going to get any objections whatsoever. But the reality is, I think that even with you being the strongest table setter, that I can really think of, you still got a bunch of objections. And if you didn't learn how to fight for your clients, you probably wouldn't have hit Hall of Fame any of those years, even your best year in the field, if you didn't, understand how to, sit there and, go toe to toe with the client. And I think it's important to know, like, you're not drawing a line in the sand, guys, saying it's me versus you. It's like, hey, we're on the same side of the sand, and like the problem is on the other side over there. You're like fighting with your client. You're fighting for your client, not with your client. Does that make sense, Zac?
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. Like, a lot of the verbiage I use during the appointment is like, me and the client are here, like he's right here, and then the insurance company's over there. I'm trying to get them to pay you and your family, right? And I think if you look at it that way, it'll change the way you phrase certain things, right? But it's always we, or here's what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. And I think to your point about pushing and overcoming objections, if you have a strong why to stand on, you can always use that. Like, so instead of, if Jamie goes, I really want to think about it, I don't go, that's stupid, or what do you want to think about? And some people train on that, and it's fine. Like, it's fine. I just never did that way. I was like, Jamie, I totally understand. Based on what you told me, it looks like this bottom number would fit into your budget. And you told me that we definitely can't leave here today. And I'm using his words, right? Jamie, you told me we definitely can't leave here today without putting something in place for your daughter. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in this lower option here to make sure that we have something in place, the bare minimum. And I'll give you the next month, think about it. If you want to raise it, we can raise it. But we're going to at least get this one set in stone, put in place today. If anything changes, you go over your budget and you want to get more coverage, I'm your guy. I'm here to help you get more coverage, but we can't leave today without having something, because that's what you told me we needed to do. You start using their words to get them to move, then they'll move, right? If it's my words, they don't care. But he goes, yep, I did say that. Yeah, I do need that. And I think the other thing that's important, especially if you're running a lot of final expense or sitting down with some older folks, it's important to remember, like, if you're sitting with someone who's 71 years old and they have 0 life insurance, they are a procrastinator, right? So sometimes they need the push, and they want someone to be assertive, be in control, and tell them what to do, and be like, and what they're mostly worried about is someone putting them into a bad spot or taking advantage of them, right? So the more you use terms like we, and here's what we're going to do, and let them know how much you have their back and how much you care about their family, they're going to be more comfortable. And at some point, if you just tell people what to do, and they know that you're advocating for the right reason, they're gonna do what you're asking them to do. I think what's happened with a lot of people is they've been sold something they didn't want or didn't need. They've been ripped off at some point in their life, and your job is to let them know that you're their guy, and you're not doing this to make a quick buck off of them. You're doing it to help them and do a service for their family that their kids are going to need, or their wife's going to need in their darkest hour, right? So I think the more that you can come at it from a place of service, which is how I really feel about it, and it definitely gets easier the more death claims you have. I counted today because I had one today. A gentleman who actually I was dealing with that right before I got on this call. Where he was out in the middle of nowhere in Colorado. It was a pain to book appointment with them. He ended up getting, a big policy to cover, their mortgage. But he told me the whole time to waste my time to come out there. I think he might have said, like, I'll shoot you if you come out there. One time when I called him, just a good old country boy. And he died of a massive heart attack like a week ago. And his whole house is gonna be paid off. And he's like 67 years old, and his wife called me crying earlier, and it's been like 2 years since I got the policy. So they're gonna pay it out like right away. So I think the more stories you have like that come around, the better, because and the other side too, Jamie, I remember I used to do travel trips out to Cincinnati, right? And I met with this guy, I door knocked him. He was 60 years old, ex-military guy, okay? And I got there, he told me he wanted to think about it. I didn't push it all because I felt awkward because it was a door knock. And his daughter called me like a month and a half later. Hey, I got your business card. Did my dad have any insurance with you? And I had to tell her that, that he had to think about it. And she was like, well, he's stubborn. I totally get it. But I could just sense the disappointment in her voice. And that was a bad feeling for me to have. So my rule moving forward was I was going to push enough to where they were going to give me a yes or a no. And I wasn't going to have it on my conscience afterwards, and it was going to come from a good place. But I would tell people, hey, if you don't want to do this, you can go ahead and tell me no, but we're not going to leave it in a place of you want to think about it, or you might do it in the future. Cause that's not fair to you and your family to, think you may have insurance, call me. And then just for me to tell them they don't have anything. Does that make sense, Bob? And then they usually take it very well,
That makes a lot of sense, man. Well, dude, that was great. So just one last transition, and then we'll get some advice and a couple questions answered. You talked about just treating this like a business owner. You talked about I could add appointments, or I could add just a couple more applications for the week to be able to increase my expenses. As a Hall of Fame producer, I mean, you have to treat this like a business to be able to steward the commissions that you have, to be able to make sure you're buying leads every single week. I mean, I know there's some people who they maybe struggle with, they write insurance, 1 week, they don't write insurance the next week. Now they're dealing with, I've got a chargeback. I'm trying to figure out how to buy leads. How do you keep people off of that roller coaster, and kind of what's your advice for someone in how to treat it like a business, how to steward the commissions well?
Yeah, I think understand first and foremost that on average, 30% is going to fall off. It might get better. Like for me, it was worse than that for a short period of time in my career. And then it got much better than that as I got better, right? So in all transparency, it was lower than that for a little bit. And then it got better as I got more experience in the industry, right? So understand that 30% is going to fall off. As you get better, that number should improve as long as you keep trying to get better at your craft, right? So understanding that, know that if you take time off, so if you have helped 10 families, just think of it like you only helped 7 and you're going to owe 3 of it back, right? And owe 3 of the families back. And I think looking at it that way will allow you to set it up and treat it like a business owner. So Jamie, we talked about, setting 30 appointments a week, but the overarching goal I always had was to run 120 appointments per month, right? And that was the biggest number. And I would plan out my schedule for 2 months with my wife in advance. So we would always know, what the 2 months look like. And I would know ahead of time, like, okay, next week, we're going to go on vacation or wherever, right? We're going to do something. So I can only run 10 appointments that week. So that means between week 1, 3, and 4, I have to add an extra 20 appointments in those weeks somehow. And it gives you enough time to prepare ahead and treat it like a real business would treat it. We're going to be closed Tuesday and Wednesday. So we have to, get more business Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right? That's what a normal business, a brick and mortar business would do, right? So I think I started treating it the same way, 120 appointments a month and planning my schedule 2 months in advance. And that was another conversation I had with Mark that we actually debated a little bit, right? And he was like, I always plan my schedule 2 months in advance. You don't even have yours planned 2 hours in advance. And I was like, dude, I get it. Like you have kids and a wife and you're in a real adult. Like I'm just like a kid out here. I don't need a schedule. And what I realized though, was that I always felt like when I was working, I should be hanging out with my wife or my family. And I always felt like when I was hanging out with them, I should be working. And it was like mental torture. So as soon as I started booking my schedule out 2 months in advance and then basing each month, knowing I had to fit 120 appointments in there somehow, I knew every day when I was dialing, Jamie, I knew if it was Monday, I would have it pre-written out in my calendar. I'd go, I need 10 appointments each of the next 2 days. I need 20 appointments. And I'm like, okay, well, in order for me to have the schedule and the time off that I've planned for, I have to get these 20 appointments done no matter what. And then I would do it because I wrote it down and planned it out ahead of time.
It's good, man. I appreciate that so much. Okay, so we got a couple questions here in the chat. New producer, John, how do you push through a dial day where you maybe didn't book your 15, you only got 10? How do you leverage your free time on the run day to try to fill in your schedule? More calls, more door knocks? What would you recommend?
Oh, dude, that's a great question. I like that. So what I would, when I was, because right away, like you may not book 30 appointments a week right away, right? And you may have to build up to that. So what I used to do was on Monday, I would book Wednesday first, and then I would book Tuesday afternoon second, and then I would fill up Tuesday morning last, right? So I would leave open my Tuesday morning, and my Tuesday, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock would be the last 3 appointments I would fill, because I wanted to leave that time open to fill in the rest of my schedule. So for me, I always found I was more effective and more efficient in dialing. Now, what I would do too, when I was, trying to build up cash flow and everything, is I would always set aside an entire Sunday every single week to go put all of my appointments, all my leads into Road Warrior and go door knock all of my appointments. Because Jamie, when I started doing this, dude, I was in South Carolina. Deb and I just graduated college, dude. I spent all my money to get out there. I think I had like $300 left, like I had, and my first lead order was like 275 of that. So like I just had to make it work. And so I would do that until I had enough cash flow going. I would go and door knock all day Sunday and either set appointments or sit with people right then and there and try to help them out. So that's my advice. So I guess during the week, I would be dialing more to set more appointments. And then if you can block out a full day to go door knock, I think you'll be surprised how many people don't answer the phone and how many families you'll be able to help from door knocking people.
Awesome, man. From a lead flow perspective, do you recommend an agent getting 100% automated lead flow? So I'm assuming that's either like direct mail or some sort of residual lead purchase, or always kind of mixing it up with the CRM leads or some kind of mix of all of it.
I kind of recommend people having a mixture of all of it, especially if you're someone that's wanting to build a team. I think one reason that I don't even know if you know this, Jamie, a couple months ago when people first started doing live transfers and virtual sales and stuff, like I acted like the fronter for people, right? So I was like on there taking live transfers, like getting the sales sold and then like passing them off to an agent. And I think, like you said, leading from the front means I want to know how to sell every different type of lead that there is, in case when I'm hire someone, they want to do a certain type of lead or they prefer a certain type of lead. So I think if you're someone that wants to build a business and have a big team, I think it's great to be and valuable to be able to know how to work every single different type of lead. Another great example of that, so Easton's one of the best leaders I've ever met, and he's just a pleasure to work with. This last weekend, one of his really good friends has been struggling a little bit, and he took him out with him, and dude, before was I against, would I be lying if I said I didn't used to be against ride-alongs? I definitely did, right? But I think everything works a little bit. But one of his friends was struggling and running a lot of appointments, and so Easton and him bought a bunch of 1 month mortgage leads. They had a couple new mortgage leads, and they had a bunch of 1 month and instant leads to run all the different lead types, so we could kind of figure out where the dude's problem was at. And they ran Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They booked like 38 appointments or something like that and ran them all together, right? And I'm not saying everyone needs to do that, but I'm saying in this circumstance, Easton was like, I'm going to work all these lead types with you and show you how to do it. And they helped, like, between the two, they each helped 19 families this weekend when they split it down the middle, right? Just from dialing. And so the point of that is saying, I think you should know and keep in practice of working all different lead types, especially if you're building a team. And the other side of that, Jamie, is if you're only relying on mail, like right now, mail has been, as you have mail, right? How slow has it been right now?
Super slow. I've been having to rely so heavily on internet leads.
Super slow, right? And that's because this time of year, everyone gets a crap ton of mail going through December. Refinances and new home purchases, especially in states like Oregon or Colorado, it slows down. Like, it's just part of the deal. So if you're only relying on that, like, what are you going to do? Only run 6 appointments a week for the 3-month period where mail slows down? No, you have to be able to shift and adjust and go, okay, like I'm going to do some virtual sales. I'm going to go travel here. I'm going to do some internet leads and do a mixture of everything.
Okay. So you kind of just talked there about just being flexible. And I think this is probably how, you'll be able to answer this next question as well. What do you guys think you do differently to have the highest issue paid? Or, I don't know if you have the crown on that still, but maybe you do, you probably do, but it doesn't
Easton's
really matter.
got it, I think.
Easton's
yeah.
There you go. Even better
Easton's
to have someone on your
killing
team who still has it. So what do you guys think you do differently to have near the highest issue paid writer per agent across your organization?
I think if you looked at it, I think it would actually be the highest appointment count per agent is more appropriate. I don't think that the average app is much higher. It might be a little bit higher because people have so many reps at it. Like Easton's probably ran more appointments than anyone in the history of the company, dude. I'd be willing to bet that at this point, because he's ran 35, 40 appointments a week for the last 3 years. So of course you put that many reps and you're just going to get much more comfortable and then you'll know like when you're sitting with certain clients, okay, this person's making this amount of money, this is where I can add value and get a very, bigger sale from this. But I think if you looked at it, the more accurate number would be average appointments per agent would be higher than a lot of people's, especially in their group. I know for sure. So I think that's the higher number. And I think that with that many reps, you get more skilled. And then, like, okay, this person here is definitely going to, get a policy that would equate to 5 families served, right? So I can, dig in and spend more time with this client.
Okay. What are your recommendations? We can be quick on this one for setting up a travel trip for someone who's never done one.
Yeah, I think I would get with whoever you directly work with or someone that does a lot of travel trips and game plan with them is the best advice, because it's specific based on your scenario, what you have to spend on leads, all that sort of stuff. As far as like the structure of a travel, so I would get with them about like what leads to get and everything, because that could differ so much depending on where you're going, all that sort of stuff. The way I always structured it is I would dial on Thursday from my home office, and then I would travel out and run Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I would leave open from 8 a.m. till 11 a.m. on Friday, completely open in my schedule. And I would book up. So on Thursday, I'd booked Friday and Saturday. I'd leave open Friday morning to book up my Sunday, so that I was able to cut down on no-shows. And my goal was to run about 30 appointments on my travel trips.
Love it. Okay. And we'll make this the last one. Still getting more.
All good, dude.
What roadmap would you give to help someone shorten the learning curve from your journey and build an agency specifically in the way you have?
So that's a great question. So I think building an agency, I thought that building an agency and selling insurance were the same skill set, right, Jamie? And what I realized with that is, even though I learned how to sell a lot, my interpersonal skills with people and learning how to coach different types of people still sucked, right? And I was like, yeah, I could teach Easton how to sell insurance because I could talk to him like he was me. But if I talked to someone else who wasn't, let's just say for lack of creative words, wasn't as messed up as him and I were, then they would get offended by it, right? So I guess the point of me saying that is that they're two separate skill sets, right? It'd be like if you were really good at football and you went, I'm going to play Major League Baseball. Or like, look at Michael Jordan, right? Like, he was the best at basketball ever, played some baseball. I don't know, wasn't that good at it, right? Or, wasn't the best ever at it like he was at basketball. So I think what I would have started doing is started focusing more time, effort, and energy on it earlier, and not being so afraid to share what I was doing with other people. Like, I think for me, I was worried about people judging me, and I don't know why. Like, looking back on it, it's so silly. I'm like, someone who's working some terrible corporate job and looks forward to happy hour every week is gonna, shoot me a nasty message on Instagram. Like, why would I care about that, right? But I did early on, and I didn't want to be judged. And I think I changed the mindset to looking at it to go, it's my responsibility to share this with everyone, because it's done a lot of amazing things for myself, my family, my future family, future generations to be taken care of. If I don't share that with everyone, I'm kind of a dick, right? So I started getting really good at sharing at it. And then when you're building a business and you don't know something, that's okay. You have to lean on other people who do know what you know, and find good mentors in business to teach you. And early on, a lot, even interviews, I'd be like, hey, so-and-so, I have someone who's interested in this business. Can you talk to them for me? Can I listen in on how you talk to them about working here? And I think it's being willing to reach out and ask for help and lean on other people, and the resources that Family First Life has, rather than trying to do everything yourself, will allow you to build a lot faster than, trying to go, okay, I recruited Jamie. Now I'm going to teach Jamie how to help 40 families a month. It's like, that's not how it works. You got to lean on resources and get good at divvying out and dividing up, and showing other people how to use the resources.
So you mentioned like reaching out for help. And I think that, everybody obviously has their immediate manager, but I know you reached out to so many other people. You reached out to the Grady's of the world, and, I could just keep on naming names, if people cross line. How did you reach out to them in a way that you weren't wasting their time? You weren't just kind of that annoying agent bugging them? And not to say we're all here to help. Like, I want to make sure I say that, but how did you reach out and like start building those relationships with people who were cross-line producers, cross-line managers, and just kind of like have that respectful relationship and like get the information that you needed?
Yeah. And dude, this is what I like when people message me too. This is what I like to see too, is, so I'd go like, so Andrew's an example of that, right? I remember I let him know, I was like, hey, I shot him I got his number from someone, which I was never afraid to ask for someone's number. I got his number. Hey, Andrew, this is Zac Twardowski. Just so you know, I'm running like 30 appointments a week. I write a lot of business. I'm just letting you know. And our team's trying to really grow and I could really use your help. I have like 3 questions that should take about 10 minutes for you to answer. When's the time that works in your schedule? I'll make any time work. So just letting him know like, hey, I am working really hard. I'm being productive. I need some help. And I have a couple quick questions that shouldn't take more than 10 minutes of your time. When's a good time to help? And so I think just reaching out and letting them know, like, because sometimes I'll get messages and someone just like, hey man, love to pick your brain for like some time. I'm like, dude, I would love to help, but I've got a lot going on, like I want to help, but if you just want to BS for 45 minutes, like, dude, I'd rather talk to my wife for 45 minutes than just BS for 45 minutes. Don't get to hear that much, So I think letting people know, like, hey, I have a couple quick questions for you. It's not gonna take much of your time. I know you're super busy. That's how I always reached out and approached everyone.
That's good. All right, we'll end on this last question. So obviously, we talked about this being a consistency thing. There's also times when, just the wear and tear. We talked about this on your manager's call the other day. Like you get tired. Like this is a hard business to do consistently over the course of a year to write at this high of a level. But obviously you also get stronger and you get better and it gets easier. But there's times when like you get into a slump. I mean, I can't tell you how many times where I've written really good business for 3 weeks and just gotten kicked in the stomach week 4. And I know Andrew talks about that all the time, just when that does happen and you just like, you go from like the highest possible high to like what you think at the time is like the lowest low. And you're like, did I just get lucky? Like writing all that business those last couple of weeks, I just went from, I sat with 25 families and I closed 23 of them to I just went 1 for 18. And I set the most appointments I've ever set before, but I had the worst results I've ever had. That happens to so many people. It happened to me more times than I can even count. I guess how would you coach someone who maybe, goes from that highest high to that lowest low?
Yeah, dude. So there's a couple of things that help me with that. So I would always reach up to people, Jamie. So when I was learning, like when I was helping 10 families a week, I didn't go to someone else who was helping 10 families a week and go, hey man, let's have our pity party together. You got no-showed, I got no-showed. Man, this sucks, right? I didn't do that. I went and found Mark Mead, who was number one producer in the country that year. It was like, hey man, can I get 5 minutes of your time? I'm really trying to figure this thing out. Can you help correct what I'm doing wrong? So I think first thing, you got to be accountable. Understand that like there's no like insurance karma or anything. It's something you've changed, whether it's your tonality or you're booking less good appointments or whatever it is. So find someone that you can go to who will be a coach to you. Like I looked at it like this, dude, like Tom Brady, even after everything he did, always had a throwing coach, right? And always had a head coach and always had an offensive coordinator, a dietitian, and a personal, like all these people around him to keep him functioning at the level he was functioning at. So I think you need to find like 3 or 4 trusted sources that you can go to when stuff is not going good. Right. And then I think have some perspective too. I don't know if you watched this. Did you watch the Tom Brady documentary at all? Speaking of him?
I haven't, but I love Tom Brady. So now I gotta.
So yeah, you got to. So in this one part of it, he talked about like the parable of the Chinese farmer. And to summarize, like there was a Chinese farmer, right? And one of his horses ran away. And everyone in the town was like, oh, that's so bad. And he was like, maybe, right? And then the next day, a bunch of horses, he brought like 10 horses back with them. And they're like, oh, what good luck. And he was like, maybe. Right, Jamie? And then the next day, his son was riding one of the horses and broke his leg. And everyone was like, oh, what bad luck. And the farmer was like, maybe. And then the next day, the army came by and was doing a draft and his son couldn't go. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, what great luck. He said, maybe, right? So I think the point of that is that nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems. And it's important to keep perspective and still, even when things are going bad, go, it's really not that bad. Things could be a lot worse, right? Yeah, right. Maybe, maybe not. Thank you, Jamie. So maybe, maybe not, right? So things could always be a lot worse. Like you used to always try to keep that perspective. And I remember like just little things or other, clients I've seen who are in terrible health, or I think back like, oh, when my mom had cancer, all the stuff that her and my dad had to go through. And I just try to like think of, and I'm like, someone has it much worse than I have. I'm alive, I'm breathing, I'm blessed to be a part of industry where I can serve people and be in control of my own schedule. So just trying to, just take a step back, take a deep breath and evaluate and go, it's really not as bad as it seems. And doing the other thing when it's going good too. Like some people, help 30 families a week and I'm like, I'm king of the world. It's like, dude, just relax. It's okay. Like, why don't you just go back and do it again next week? So I think just figuring out how to keep an even keel. Once you have an even keel and you can stay unemotional in this business, dude, then you're in control of everything. And then you start really kicking ass and taking names,
All right, man. Any last advice? So, I mean, obviously we call this, the road to Hall of Fame. So there's a lot of people who are on the road. Some people are going to make it, all the way to the destination. Some people, they're going to make it to, 150, 200, 300 families. And that's still, a fantastic living to make. But I mean, for somebody who says, I want to be on the road to Hall of Fame, I don't just want to, pull off somewhere along the path, but I want to make it all the way to, 400 families. I'm making the decision right now that even if I'm behind right now, I'm going to make it happen. Any final advice for them?
Yeah, dude, I think the other thing I wanted to add, and I'm glad you brought this up, is if you feel like you're getting comfortable or you're not getting uncomfortable and you're not learning something new or continually improving, I think you're dying in an industry like this, So I think even when you feel like you're doing really well, there's always things you can improve on. So I think, obviously with the consistency, everything is great, but you have to keep looking for little tweaks you can make, little advantages you can do, little ways you can get out ahead of everyone else and continually keep getting better. Even when you have the best week you've ever had, still evaluate it and go, hey, or evaluate it and see it and we can take away from it, but always be learning and trying to improve and trying to get a little bit better every single day. And it's really, if you break it all down, it's like 7 families helped a week. It's not that much, right? But it's really easy to look at it and kind of look at 400 families and go, that's a lot. But if you break it down to 7 families helped a week, anyone who books 30 appointments a week can help 7 families a week. So if you stay consistent and try to get a little bit better every day, I really do think anyone can do this, but it's where the compounding interest starts to add up where, I'm gonna take that week off and the next week. Well, now we're 14 families behind. Now that's a lot more than just 7 families, right? Now you're 14 behind, you got to help 20, 21 the next week. It starts to add up a lot. So you have to stay consistent and figure out every single week what you can do to get better. Or if you had the best week ever, sit back, take some notes and go, all right, what did I do right this week that I can take and make sure I do every single week moving forward, and just consistently be a student of the game and keep getting better every day.